When I was in Afghanistan, working on the borders of Afghanistan, before the Russian had left Afghanistan, of course, all that was happening was really a reflection of Zbig Brzezinski's work, the Grand Chessboard. And in that, he had written, that whatever happens, the United States must never allow if you like, the heartland to come together. That is Central Asia to come together as a political institution.
Okay, let me just stop you. You're speaking of Zbigniew Brzezinski, no longer living. He was the national security advisor and foreign policy guru under President Carter.
Yeah, and he was the one who recommended to Carter to send in the Islamists into Afghanistan in order to turn Afghanistan into a quagmire for Russia, well, Soviet Union at that time. But that was his policy, and he wrote that paper about it.
He recommended to Carter to send the Islamists into Afghanistan, with whom we would eventually have a war, and which George Bush would invade, and the government would occupy for 20 years.
Exactly. He recommended that the Islamists go in, and this was the start of that relationship with Saudi Arabia, but supporting the Islamist movements to undermine, which was a very sort of secular and communist government that was in Kabul at that time. But at the same time, he also wrote his famous book, The Great Chessboard. And on that, he wrote very clearly, 97, I think it was, or 96, he was writing that the key piece in keeping for America to keep the heartland divided, he who rules the heartland rules the world, was the theme of the book. And that must never be allowed, because the United States would be damaged by that. And so his argument was Ukraine was the key to this process. And he put in his book, he wrote very clearly, if Ukraine is with Russia, Russia will become a great heartland power. But without it, it won't. It can't become a great power. So even then, all that time ago, the neocons and Brzezinski, at the time, as you say, the national security advisor, was very clear. The heartland must never take shape. And furthermore, Ukraine is the pivotal piece. If it goes towards Russia and China, then there will be a powerful heartland. If we can pull it away, then there won't be one.
So Brzezinski says he who rules the heartland rules the world.
Yes.
And Henry Kissinger, his predecessor by 2 presidents, said, correct me if I'm wrong, he who controls money controls the world. Who's right, Alistair? Or is there some third vision of this?
Well, I mean, of course, this goes back to the old geopolitics that we've been struggling with, the heartland versus the naval powers, the Atlanticist powers. And it was always thought that the naval powers, of which Europe and Britain and America were of great examples, had to not allow the landmass to form, if you like, a strong political union together. But Kissinger was wrong, because he just said money. He who has money, who rules the monetary system, rules the world. But of course, what we've now seen, and Putin has sort of proved that doctrine was wrong, because it's shown that it's not money alone that's sufficient. It's raw materials, it is energy, people, it is the whole technology. These are the things that allow you to rule the heartland, not just money alone. But America then invested heavily on Kissinger's. I mean, Kissinger was the architect of the petrodollar with the Saudis to create the system whereby the dollar would be the most powerful hegemonic currency, if you like, and a sort of, if you like, a quiet way of creating colonialism to replace the old style of colonialism of military force.
Has raw materials, energy, and a passionate population base.
And a manufacturing base, too.
Correct. enabled Putin, A, to defeat or overcome or neutralize the effect of American sanctions, and B, elevate the existence of BRICS so as to manifest a vulnerability to the American petrodollar.
Oh, precisely, yes. In fact, and this is one of the two things which is quite striking, which I regard as sort of egregious mistakes here by Washington, in the sense with one, the sanctions on Russia has made Russia economically stronger. It propelled them into making changes, economic changes, becoming self-sufficiency, modernizing their economy, making it, keeping it sort of self-sufficient so it wasn't dependent on the West. And that has been effect. So the sanctions have now actually had a reverse effect. It's weakened America's ally, Europe, quite noticeably. We've been weakened by the sanctions on Russia, and Russia has been strengthened. But I would also argue at the same time that is this sort of siege of China, this tech, high-powered tech, if you like, microchips and the best of tech on China, is doing the same to America. And we've seen that with China suddenly producing a smartphone with a 7nm small chip in it, against all the expectations. It was thought the Huawei was finished by the isolation and the sanctions putting on it. Actually, it spurred the Chinese to move quicker than anyone had imagined in terms of getting down to an advanced microchip, equivalent pretty well to anything that the West has had, or within a year it will be, certainly. So it's having the opposite effect. And what I'm saying is it's actually going to constrain Western technology, not increase it, because it's turned it into a competition and a siege. But who's sieging who in the end of the day? I mean, it may end up by being China. You know, people will say, oh, well, will we take our chips from America if we're possibly going to be sanctioned for taking anything? Even the machinery that make chips is sanctioned at the moment. So maybe we're better off just buying it from China. So I don't think it's going to work very well. And the consequence of this now is we're facing a rising pressure from the global world and the global, the global South and BRICS and the remainder of G20 and the African Union now come forward, and they feel they have the clout, the financial clout, and they have the desire to say, we want a place at top table now. We want to control. We're not going to let you decide the financial. We want a complete reform of Bretton Woods, of the financial structures, and WTO, and the World Bank, and IMF, and all of this. We want to be voting members. We want to change it.